Thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm Kerry, the CEO and co-founder of Searchlight. Just first and foremost, hoping all of you and your loved ones are as safe as possible with everything happening. Our mission at Searchlight is to help companies build the best teams. Traditionally, we've worked with companies directly to do this. However, after hearing about so many layoffs, we realized there was a huge need to support job seekers during this time. That's why we organized this webinar to bring together experts who've been recruiting and on the job search to talk about the current state of job searching and provide personal stories, actionable advice, and some encouragement for those looking for their next team. To give some context on who's with us today, we have several hundred people live, job seekers who are all over the US, UK, India, Middle East, and Canada. There were over 150 questions submitted through registration, and we will try to cover as many relevant topics as possible. This webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing and resharing within 24 hours. To give everyone a sense for the format, we have 4 portions. 1, we'll do brief introductions on our panelists. 2, we'll give a behind the scenes look into what it's like for talent teams hiring right now. 3, we'll share best practices for candidates job hunting right now. And 4, we're leaving plenty of time for Q&A. So please do submit your questions throughout the webinar in the box that you're going to see at the bottom of your screen. All right, let's kick this off with introductions. I'm excited to be moderating this conversation between 3 wonderful people: Carly, a recruiting manager at Airtable; Allison, product manager at Zeus; and Hope, head of talent attraction at InVision. They all bring a unique perspective to this panel, so I'm going to quickly go around and share their backgrounds and ask a question for each of them. First off, we have Carly Donovan from Airtable. Carly is a recruiter turned recruiting leader at high growth companies like MuleSoft, Salesforce, TripActions, and now Airtable. After going through the job search this past month, she's joined Airtable to lead go-to-market recruiting in New York and San Francisco. She's passionate about helping people find the right fit and enabling companies to scale. One follow-up question for you, Carly. What's a story you can share from your own job search in the middle of this global pandemic, which ended with you joining Airtable 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, thanks, Kerry, and hi everyone. Thanks for having me today. One story, I think like many people that are job searching right now, it comes unexpected. It comes from an unexpected time, unexpected place where you're suddenly on the job search and a lot of things happen that you don't expect. For me, for example, I didn't have a personal computer, so I did all of my interviewing from my phone. You just have to do what works as best you can. But I think, the network that I had, the network I've been able to build really helped me find the right people to connect me to Airtable. So I think overall, just rolling with the punches and working with what you've got, and you'll be fine.
Thank you, Carly, for joining us. And we're really excited to dive more. And congratulations on a successful search on a mobile phone.
Thank you.
Second, we have Allison Silber from Zeus Living. Allison is a product manager at Zeus, who also co-founded Happy to Help to connect job seekers with career coaching in response to layoffs. Before moving into product, she was the sole recruiter at Zeus, where she helped 3x headcount growth in a year. She has a lot of experience from the company perspective and now uses that expertise to coach others with interview prep and resume support. So one follow-up question for you, Allison. What's your favorite story from Happy to Help in coaching people with interview and resume support?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Hello, everybody. I have had the opportunity to personally mentor and support several people. One of them was applying for the Facebook rotational PM program, and she came from customer success and really didn't have any background in being a PM. And so we started with the initial kind of recruiter screen, and she honestly did so much prep, came to me with like, these are the questions that are generally asked. We went through a lot, and every single round we were able to kind of focus on whatever she needed as she passed on. And then she messaged me saying that, you know, she was very excited. She would move to the next step. We would then get back on the phone and do that. And she's still waiting to hear, but just the amount of like growth I've seen in her over the past couple of months or weeks, I guess, has been really awesome to see. I mean, she's just been so diligent about what she needs to do and what she needs to prep on. And then there's also just so many examples that I've seen going through these different applications. We had, you know, a head of talent that was laid off that was like, give me 5 or 10 people. I want to help as many people as I can. I have the time right now. And I've been seeing so much of that it's really fun to see kind of the community that's come together around this.
I love that. Thank you, Allison, for joining us. And I feel like the silver lining through all this is the community coming together to help others. So thank you for making that possible.
Yeah.
Last but not least, we have Hope Weatherford from InVision. Hope has spent the majority of her career in tech, connecting top talent with top companies. Fun fact about Hope, she has spent the last 12 plus years leading global teams in a remote environment and currently leads the talent attraction team at InVision, a 700 plus person fully distributed company. One follow-up question for you, Hope. I'm curious to know, what's the biggest difference between working at a huge company like Cisco with 75,000 employees to now working at InVision, which is a fully remote 700 person team?
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for having me today. I'm super grateful to be here. I would say the biggest difference, there's a lot, but the biggest difference really is being able to move with velocity. You know, at InVision, you know, we move very fast. We think, you know, we're creating operational rigor as we, you know, as we continue to move fast. And the key to that, and the key to being able to move with speed in the way that we do is how we communicate with each other, especially in a fully remote environment, and ensuring that we over communicate and simplify our communications. That for us, we have found is like that sweet spot in terms of how we are able to move with the velocity that we're able to do.
That's wonderful. And again, thank you, Hope, for being here. And I'm sure the audience is going to appreciate your perspective from such a diverse set of organizations. I'm excited to dive in. Let's talk about what hiring currently looks like for talent teams. Top of mind for so many of us is the impact of COVID in just a short amount of time. Just in the US alone, over 33 million people have applied for unemployment. There's a lot of economic uncertainty, and so many social norms have changed because of shelter in place. A lot of people have drawn comparisons between the present day and the Great Recession of 2008 to find lessons we can learn from the past. So first question to the whole panel, where were you during the last recession, and what peace of mind can you give to the people now, given your past experiences?
Yeah, I can jump in here. During the last recession in 2008, I was getting ready to graduate from university. And that was a scary time. You know, everyone who had graduated the year ahead of me still didn't have jobs yet. It was a very long period of time that we were trying to bounce back. So I graduated right in the middle, smack dab in the middle of the recession, and had to pay off school loans pretty soon, didn't have any job prospects. So I went ahead and started my own company and actually just did some exterior house painting for a while, hired a bunch of painters, got the equipment. I had to pay off school loans, so you had to make it work. So I think, you know, especially nowadays, if you're not finding a job out there right away, I'm sure there's something that you can do and use the skills that you have to make it work.
Yeah, actually kind of a similar story to that. I was pretty early in my career around that time, and I actually just ended up starting a company as well, which ended up lasting for about 8 years. So it was kind of an interesting time. I don't really remember it being the same. I remember it being a little more drawn out, but it kind of a similar situation where I just thought, this is something that I'm passionate about and I can maybe start now and let's see where it takes me. And luckily it ended up kind of taking me quite far, but yeah, I mean, peace of mind. I think that this is just something that might take a little bit longer than we might expect, but we bounced back from the last one, and the same will happen this time around.
Yeah, and you guys, my experience was a little bit different. And at that time, I was leading a recruiting team at Cisco, and it was a global team, and we were able to see so many different things and so many feelings, right? And so many changes in the in industry, right? Like sometimes you'd see a lot of hiring happen in small pockets of areas. That was when user experience was becoming a thing, a really big thing. And so there were always pieces in the specific skills or a specific part in an industry where you would see ebbs and flows in what was a hot skill set at that time. What I will say that's very different this time is from 2008 is companies are still hiring. Companies are hiring, and social media is playing such a huge difference than what we saw in 2008, in 2009. So, people want to help, right? I mean, you've already heard this already. So let them help you, right? Like, let us help, like help you, help, all of those things. And what you're also starting to see, and I've seen it, a little bit probably faster than other people have, is that companies are now starting to look at their talent pools very differently. So just because you're not in the Bay Area, if you're in the US, or just if you're not in London, or you're in some place, don't let that weigh you down, because we are starting to see that companies that traditionally only hire in one or four specific locations, they're starting to look at their talent pool a little bit different. And we're seeing people, getting reached out from companies that they would have never, A, thought to apply to, or B, thought that it was ever in their realm of things that they could do. So.
Thank you, Hope, for sharing that. And that's a really great transition into what was going to be my next question on what are the biggest changes. And I love the positive things that you've just shared around people are looking at talent pools differently, and just overall people are still hiring, but what's different?
Yeah. And, for us at InVision, and I'll give you this perspective as well, the other side of the story is that we've seen an influx in our candidate applicants, or the number of applications that we're getting. We'll probably see about a 250% increase week over week. It's really crazy.
Wow.
And we're doing everything that we can to handle and physically review, not through some system and making sure that there's a match through through an ATS and things like that. We are really doing everything that we can to review every person that comes through. I would say that what we are seeing too is we're seeing talent. The level of talent that we're seeing is something that we haven't seen in quite some time from just like that general application pool. So just know that other companies are feeling that same thing. And for us, some of the things that we are, looking at really are changing the way that we look at our process. And we'll talk about that, I think, in just a little bit when we talk more about remote interviewing.
Yeah, I have to echo. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to echo what Hope was saying. Similarly, we're seeing a lot more interest, inbound interest, and putting more resources to making sure that we're reviewing the profiles that are coming in and really spending some time to see where we see that fit. We're seeing people on the market that we don't normally see on the market. And it's gotten us to think a little bit differently. Before, where we would fly someone across country just to interview and meet in person, while that's great, we don't have to do that anymore. We're seeing we can still make great hiring decisions without having to fly someone across the country. So now that we've adapted to that, it's what does that mean in the future for the hiring processes? And what does that mean for, like Hope was saying, talent who are in different areas of the country that wouldn't before necessarily get a job in a Bay Area tech company? Maybe they can now, because we see there may not be a need to always be in person.
Yeah, I haven't been in recruiting for a little bit, so definitely echo what they're saying. I'm sure, I have heard from applicants that there is just a large number of people applying. So one thing I will mention that is a big recent change is there are a lot of resources now, lists and websites that have popped up around that are really there to support people that have been laid off, kind of giving them a chance to, put their information out there and put their best foot forward with maybe some of their skill sets or something about them. And so what I would recommend is really taking advantage of those. I have seen a lot of people get great response from there. And, there are still people that are sourcing for, these roles that they're looking for. And that's just a great way to get your name out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think one of the other things too is, from we've been a fully remote company since we were founded. And so we've really, I don't want to say we've perfected because there's always room for improvement, but we have a pretty solid process around how we virtually interview. The one thing that I will say is how we've adjusted to the volume in which we're having and just this tremendous amount of talent that is out there is that we're starting to look at things a little bit differently on how we can create a process that allows you as the candidate to go through the process much faster, right? And also, accommodating that you may have, obviously other priorities in your life. You may have family at home that may accidentally walk in while you're in on an interview, right? Like these things are going to happen. It happens to all of us. Things happen, right? The dog could be barking, the fire truck could be going by, like it could be a million of these things. And so really making sure that our interviewers are prepared for those things that happen. I think we've all kind of gotten really good at it. And then just making sure that our processes are set up in such a way that we can move you as the candidate through an interview process faster, but still creating a candidate experience where you can get a feel for what our company looks like, or any other companies. A lot of companies are reaching out and spending a lot of time with other companies, helping them try to, we talk about like going applying somewhere to a certain office so that you can get a feel of the office. You can absolutely do that in a remote or virtual interview as well. And so ask those types of questions while you're going through that process as well.
Thanks, Hope. And getting your expertise in terms of InVision, having done this for years, it's great to know that you're still being able to expedite that and working more efficient even during this time. Mm-hmm. Going back to Carly, you said something about Airtable now having the confidence to hire without having to fly someone around the country. What were things and changes that you implemented there that led to that confidence?
Right. So first we have to make sure that we're operationally sound and that the coordination is down pat. We've got some really strong coordinators that have made that very seamless. But for example, when you think about interviewing, you come on site, someone is greeting you, you're moved to a room where you interview, and you may have a few different interviewers come and meet with you with a period of time in between. So how do we replicate that in a remote environment and still make it feel comfortable and not have, someone entering the wrong Zoom link? So some of the things that we've done, and again, big props to the recruiting coordinators out there because a lot of this is falling on them. But we've set some time right before the interview to do a little meet and greet. So the RC, the recruiting coordinator, is meeting and greeting the candidate, making sure they're comfortable, testing the technology in the Zoom link to make sure that that is working if you're using Zoom. We would have candidates come in and have lunch with us, or have a quick coffee chat. We can't do that anymore. So maybe we can send them a gift card so that they can go get coffee, so little tidbits like that along the way. But making sure that there's that buffer time and that there is still someone there to meet and greet the candidate and answer questions between their sets of interviews. And that's made a big difference. At least I noticed that in my interview process at Airtable, and that's what really stood out, was how seamless the remote interviewing experience was.
Yeah, echoing on that a bit, and from more of a candidate perspective, there's some things that are actually really nice about remote interviewing. You can do things like have like a bit of a note, a post-it note or a note on your computer with just some of your go-to stories, so that you can kind of, or metrics, and to make sure that you're, oftentimes people get really nervous interviewing and tend to forget some of the stuff that they've done and how to best communicate that. So, there's an opportunity there to put it on your screen and just kind of, bullet points so that you can flow through some of the conversations a little bit easier and not forget things. I think that's like a very good, that's a positive about the remote interviewing. It can be a little bit awkward. There's lags, or especially when somebody cuts out, and sometimes you just have to do your best and like miss a sentence and keep talking. But overall, I think that with the Zoom and a lot of the things that we're doing right now, it actually seems to be a pretty seamless process on the candidate end.
That's wonderful. And I really believe it's beneficial for job seekers to hear what it is like behind the scenes on the recruiter side. So audience members, please feel free to submit your questions as you think of them. This is a good time to move on to focus on the other side of the hiring table on job seekers. So let's talk about tactics, mistakes people make, and best practices. To kick that off, let's do some myth busting. What should candidates absolutely not do during this time?
Yeah, I can start. I think now more than ever, it's very important to be authentic, especially with Zoom and some of these. I guess I'll kind of going back on a bit of what I said just now, but I've seen candidates read word from word from paper, or try their best to put their communicate in a way that's not completely themselves or not authentic. And what it does is it becomes very difficult to understand who this person is and what they can do. And now, with the opportunity to be on Zoom and to be able to read, I think it's really important not to it needs to come from your own words and be authentic in the interview itself. A couple other things I would say is just, I think it's important to reach out. And if you don't have whatever kind of network you have, it is important to reach out potentially to people that you don't know, but that can get salesy. So, there is a balance of making sure that you are being real and authentic. And if you have a friend, have them intro you to the person you need, just doing whatever you can to make more of a personal connection, especially in this time when, frankly, we probably all need more personal connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think another thing, just getting super tactical, guys, is really around, you find a company, you haven't heard of it, you go in and you find 5 jobs that look like your dream jobs. Mm-hmm. Take a step back, think about what you've done, maybe what you aspire to do, and then take a step and read that job description. And I have this rule: if you feel like you hit 85 to 90% of what is in that job description, then go ahead and submit your resume. But the one thing that you don't want to see is applicant who applies for an engineering role and a sales role and a customer success role. That sometimes, it kind of jumbles up a lot of like where we really see where your interest lies. So that would be one thing. And that is just a super kind of tactical thing that we see, I would say across the board, we see a lot. And then I would say, I hear a lot of people saying, oh, just, reach out to your entire network, like Allison was saying, like on LinkedIn. And, everybody is probably getting a lot of LinkedIn requests right now. And if you do want to reach out about a specific role or a network into a specific company, make sure that your outreach message is definitely one that's personal, and like maybe have something that sounds like a little bit different. Be like, hey, I'd love to, buy you a virtual coffee if you can spend 20 minutes talking to me about what it's like to work at Airtable, or, wherever that company may lie. And then sometimes, it's just like, hey, I know if you do know this person and you haven't connected in time, start the conversation out with, I'd love just to reconnect and see how you are. Right? And don't always connect it to, oh gosh, and hey, by the way, can you tell me about rec number 5224, right? And do you know anyone that can help me get that job? So those would be some of the pieces that I have heard people, from like a bad advice kind of situation. You're going to get frustrated more than you're going to get a result.
Yeah,
For me,
absolutely.
just what I'm hearing is a lot about authenticity and really this theme of quality over quantity, right? Like, do reach out, do apply for jobs, but just be thoughtful about it and be personal and authentic. How does that resonate with you, Carly, especially considering you were just on the job search yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it really does resonate. One thing I think, to Hope's point, that makes a big difference is, don't sell yourself short. Really think about, what do you want to do? What are you good at? What is that next step in your career, next couple steps in your career, and go for that. Don't doubt yourself and lose your confidence. You've got skills and you got to where you are for a reason. So think about what you want to go for and go for it. Don't try and take 2 steps back or be too open to different opportunities and say, oh, I'll take anything. Like, really go for what you want and have confidence in yourself. When you're interviewing and you have that confidence and you know your worth, that comes across much better to the interviewers, to the company, than if you're just a little bit too open or starting to doubt yourself a little bit. And it can be hard, but remember, you got to where you are for a reason, and stand on that foundation.
Mhm.
I love that. I love that positivity. And reflecting on this, just going a little bit further, what were some worries and concerns, Carly, that you had that are silly looking back?
Yeah, so going through a job search right now, if anyone, I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that are going through that job search, and there are days when you feel high and you're like, I can do this. I've got it. 2 companies got back to me. I scheduled 2 interviews. The very next day, no one gets back to you. And all of a sudden you start just worrying, and that anxiety level comes up, and you think, I'm never going to get a job. I'm going to be, on the market forever. I'm going to be that house that's been on the market forever, and it's not going to work. And it can change instantly. You don't know what you're going to get from day to day and how you're going to feel. And that's exactly how I felt too, being on the job search. And I think, that still happens whether or not we're in a global pandemic. If you're on a job search, there's going to be a day where someone doesn't get back to you, but you don't start to doubt yourself that much. So I think looking back, while understandable, could have been a little bit silly to really go to that extreme and think, I'm never going to get a job. If there is an up day or a down day, don't worry. It's all going to pan out. And it's okay that you didn't hear back from one company as soon as you might think. You just wait another day and they'll probably get back to you.
It's awesome. Just keep going, right? There's going to be those highs and lows, but staying confident, again, keeping that quality bar up seems to be the best way and the best mentality. So if you were job seeking right now, and this goes to everyone on the panel, what would be the things you'd focus 80% of your time on?
Mm-hmm. For me, I'll start this one. I think create a schedule that works for you, and think about how you want to spend your time. Some of you are probably in a different, you may be early in career, you may be mid-career, you could be a more senior level person. And I think that is going to be dependent on how you spend your time. The earlier in career that you're going to be, I would say spend most of your time networking and continuing to build on to the skills that you have learned in school or are learning, and continuing to do those things, even if that you have to think and think creative around how you do that, right? Just depending on what you're doing. But I definitely think networking, continuing education, reading, participating in webinars, prepping potentially for mock interviews, virtual mock interviews, which is a different scenario than what you potentially have been prepped for about all of these, in-person interviews at schools and, interview days and things like that. Really being able to perfect and feel comfortable in a virtual environment is going to be key there. So that's how I would spend my 80% of my time. And then I think where I'd spend the 20% of my time otherwise is, taking care of yourself, right? And giving yourself a break, and having, when you're building that schedule, take a break and say, my job search is going to be an hour or 2 hours looking for new roles that have come up, and really thinking about how you're going to look for those roles. And then I'm going to spend an hour networking, or I'm going to do these things, and really just give yourself that grace to step away when you need to, because sometimes even at work, right, you're not going to be the most productive every part of the day. So no, you just need to, listen to yourself too, right? Because it can get discouraging.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. So 80% of my time spent when I was on my job search last month was working my network, talking to the people I've worked with in the past, I've hired with in the past, updating them, just checking in, see how they're going, how they're doing, do they know any companies or people? How can I help them? Do they need connections? It can be exhausting, during that time to have to network so much, but that's really, I think, was the best use of my time. A lot of the times candidates can feel like the whole job search is on their shoulders and I'm by myself and I need to apply to 100 jobs today or 100 jobs this week. I don't think that's a great use of time. Spend that time talking to people and getting out there and mentioning that you're looking for a job and connecting to different people that you might know. And maybe spend that 20% applying to a select number of jobs, but you're going to get more out of it by helping other people and bringing other people into your search rather than just putting it all on your own shoulders.
Yeah, what I would add to that, how I would spend 80% of my time, definitely networking and talking to people. I know for me, a lot of candidates, and I've really been proactive about asking, like, what exactly are you looking for? What roles are you looking for? And I'm on LinkedIn, I'm around, and, I find roles for somebody and I'll send them over. I see that a friend of mine on LinkedIn has posted something, I'll send it over. Let other people help you. Let other people find those jobs for you. Maybe they know of a company, just let all of it, there's a lot of information out there, especially right now. People are posting layoff posts, people are posting job posts. Let other people help you and in turn help them. What can you do to help them? Can you look out for their roles, that type of thing? And then, one thing that I would say that I've done in the past and found really helpful is, with even, it could be friends, it could be past colleagues, whoever you want, send them, or actually more importantly, like I've done this in Slack groups where I will post my resume to people that I don't know. And my question is who do you think I am based on this experience? And what that has allowed me to do is have a better understanding of how my story is being shown through my resume. And then they'll pick up, there's a lot of, well, based on this, I think X, Y, and Z about you. And that's not necessarily true, but that's maybe how it stands out. And it just really helps you kind of hone in your resume and your LinkedIn so that you can tell a better story about yourself if you're getting that feedback, hopefully from not friends and people that really don't know you. Otherwise, they'll start putting pieces together that, somebody that doesn't know you might not be able to do.
That's very actionable advice, Allison. Are there specific Slack groups that you found are public that you can post to that have people that you don't know?
Yeah, I mean, I've done it in Facebook groups. I've done it in Slack groups. I'm part of the Women in Product Facebook group. I think I did it there. I've been a part of a couple like people team groups in the past. I'm not big on, I don't have a lot of Slack groups that I know of, but I've just done it, in sort of some of these forums that I can. And it has helped a lot to just get people reflecting back to me what their story is of me.
So what I'm hearing is really three main messages are coming to the top. One is build in a break and build your own schedule. I'm hearing help each other. And three, it's the networking piece, right? Allison's tactic in posting a resume to a Facebook group works. A question that we got a lot through the audience was, how do you network when sheltering in place? Any particular methods come out?
Yeah, so I would say that, again, grabbing that virtual coffee, right? Putting yourself, connect with a previous coworker, right? Not necessarily from the role that, or the company that you were just at. Like go back and talk to, someone who you may not have had time to connect with previously. That could even be somebody from, somebody from college, right? Or university. It could be someone who you did an internship with. And just see how they are. So, the beautiful thing is that, between FaceTime, between Zoom and, WebEx and everything, you still have the opportunity to really think about connecting with somebody, you know, even though it's virtual. Like, I truly believe, and InVision truly believes, that the screen is like the most important thing in the world. And I think right now we're in a place to where I can say even more, I feel very much that way. And use that to your advantage, right? When you're thinking about how you're going to network, if you have you know, I've seen so many more people outside taking walks. For those of you that are in an area where you can go outside and take a walk, like, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy and a little bit losing it on the inside by being in the house all the time. When I see someone going down the street, I'm like, your dog is so cool. You never know who that person is on the other side of the street, right? And starting that conversation with them, you know, you never know where that could ultimately lead, right? They may have a friend who, you know, gosh, they're looking for, something that works within what your world looks in. So I think there's a lot of ways to do it when you're in between, you know, when you're in four walls. Like, you can expand those four walls out so much, but there's also ways that I think we all, as, you know, people have almost forgotten, is like, hey, talk to that person walking down the street that you may not know. I mean, as long as you feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah, I would say, like, networking is a funny term. I think everyone thinks it means, like, just talk to a bunch of people you don't know and get a job. And I think it's, you know, like, to Hope's point, it's really about, like, reconnecting with past coworkers, colleagues, friends. Like, you have no idea how, you know, every time maybe the last time I got a job was through somebody that I had met on Twitter that I had talked to a couple times and helped out a couple projects for. You kind of just don't, you know, and what happened was I actually just reached out to him on a personal level, just saying hi. We got to talking, and it led to a job. And I think, you know, the point is that it really comes down to just, like, being, like, it's all about connection. It's just being authentic. Like, start with the people you know, and then from there, you know, maybe they're really willing to introduce you. Maybe they know some people. You never know where that's going to turn up, and really, you can't have the expectation that every networking conversation is going to land you a job, but it's really just, you know, it's building on the network, building on your connections, and hopefully those get stronger over time.
Another question, and we got a lot of this from the audience, was about systems for personalizing resumes and cover letters. So I want to touch on that as well. Allison, you mentioned about the importance of honing your story. Carly and Hope, I'm curious about other things that have worked for you.
So I'll say, just from, again, a tactical perspective, depending on where you are in your career, really focus your resume in such a way. If you are, you know, very early in your career, probably 1-page or 2-page at best resume. You don't have to go back to the job that you had in high school unless it's relevant, you know, tying you to something that you are doing, you know, or passionate about today in your job search. And then I will say also, you know, I think this is my personal opinion. You know, a lot of times I think people spend a lot of time on cover letters. And I think dependent on the industry, I think dependent on the type of company that you're looking at. Sometimes I think that cover letters, with the time that it takes to build them, sometimes I think people just want to now get, like, down into, like, hey, does this person's experiences match what I'm looking for? I will say that there's probably maybe varying opinions on that across this group. And I think it does also depend on industry, where you are in your career. So I'm not saying, like, no one do a cover letter ever again, but I will say that, you know, I think just think about that as you're building it. And then, you know, make sure, like how Allison mentioned, make sure that your resume really tells that story of who you are, and tells your story of who you are and what you can bring to the table, and how you've done that, right? Actionable, you know, if you're in sales, talk about the quota that you hit, talk about a new product that you know, helped launch, if you're, you know, product, or, you know, all of the different things that you can do. From a system perspective, I would say, you know, do your homework as you're, you know, learning about a company or a specific position. And one resume is not going to, even if you're looking for a specific type of a role, one resume is not going to be a one-size-fits-all in most cases. especially as you get a little bit later in your career, you may want to highlight certain areas for certain positions.
Yeah, I think that those are great points. I'm on the same page as you, Hope, with cover letters. In my personal opinion, think that they can often do more harm than they can help. You know, a cover letter I often see maybe summarizing someone's background. That's not helpful because we can summarize your background by looking at your LinkedIn. What I do find cover letters being useful is you need to explain something that isn't really explained on your resume. Perhaps a change in location. You're looking to make a move across country, and that's why you're applying to this job that's across country. Explaining something that might be a question mark just by looking at your resume. For the most part, I personally don't think that they're that useful. You know, the resume will speak for itself. And, you know, on your resume, I find it's better to speak to what you specifically did in your role, not what you were responsible for. So as opposed to copying what was on the job description of the job you held, talk to what you actually accomplished. And your bullets should start with actionable words: managed, supervised, led, promoted. If you were promoted, make sure that's evident on your resume.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard ways to stand out. It's network, get the referral. I've heard customize and build on your resume, specifically talk about what you did and think about your story. And then for cover letters, it's kind of up in the air, different opinions on that. But if you do write one, do share things that are different than what's already on your resume.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say one other thing. I think the second piece to that is like, how do you stand out once you get that screen with your recruiter, right? I think that's a big one. You're like, oh, I've got this recruiter call. You know, be prepared, right? Have questions to ask. You know, do your research on the company, and you know, be in a place where you can, you know, talk freely. And you know, I will say at this point, always be prepared for video. You never know where somebody like, oh, hey, can you share your screen? Or, hey, can you know, jump on video? Most calls are going to be set up at this point through some sort of call technology, right? So just be prepared for that. And then mostly, you know, try to connect with that recruiter and, you know, make them want to remember you at the end of their day, right? And that could be, you know, you could have like, hey, I don't know. So InVision, a big part of our brand is pink, right? So maybe wear a pink shirt and be like, hey, I've got my InVision shirt on today, or, you know, something to remind them like, gosh, you know what a great candidate who was able to, you know, break through that screen and really connect on a different level than just answering the questions that the recruiters have.
I love all that. There's just so much wisdom here, and we could spend so much longer on this, but I do want to open it up to the audience and get specific questions from them. So I'm going to look through the Q&A. One major question that's been coming up is for candidates who are looking to make a career shift. Is there any specific actionable advice that you could provide job seekers in that boat?
I think a big part of, so you're making a career shift, you know, it can be hard sometimes to go at that cold. And that will go back to my point around networking. If you're looking to make the career shift, you want to have some references and referrals that are willing to speak on your behalf. So if you can go through that career shift and take the direction of using your network to find an opportunity and have people backing you, that can really speak to your skills and why that might be a good shift. So I think using the people around you and having references and referrals ready to support you in that.
Yeah, I also think definitely going at that cold is definitely a challenge. So finding a role that, you know, at a company that, you know, has some room for growth or improvement or would accept a shift, doing what you're good at right now. And then, you know, once you're in that position, take on some different projects or talk to the people that are in that department or team that you want to be on. It is definitely a hard thing to do, probably especially right now where there's so many applicants. It's very easy to weed out anyone that doesn't have direct experience. But I don't know, I would say with that, it might be a good time to just focus on your strengths, find something that you're willing to, find a role that you're good at, that you're willing to do for a year. And in that time, just really, and it can happen pretty quickly, especially with small companies, there's a lot to do. And if you're the one that's willing to jump in and sort of take on some of that, then it can happen pretty quickly. But I personally wouldn't focus on a career shift right this moment, but that might just be me.
Allison, I would say I agree. I think it's going to be a really hard, it's a hard transition on a regular day. It's going to be harder now, unless there is just this moment of all the things coming together in such a way, and you're also able to be flexible in what your expectations are. I think now would be, if you really are looking to change careers, unless it's a dramatic shift into an industry that is willing to train, or an industry that you can easily go and get some level of a certification before going into it. I think, and it's an industry that there's a demand for it right now. I think that may be one of the areas that's a little bit different, but yeah, I would say on normal circumstances right now would be a very challenging time to transition careers.
One more thing I meant to add to that, if you are at the point where you want to make a shift in your career and you have a call with the recruiter, it's really on you as the candidate to get a really good understanding of what that desired job is. So what are the responsibilities of this job that you want? Have a really good understanding of what are you looking for in that candidate, and then be able to connect the dots for the recruiter of where in your background that experience is very relevant, so that you can help that recruiter understand how your experience, although different, is relevant to what they're looking for. Because at the end of the day, that recruiter is now your advocate, and they have to pitch your background to the hiring manager. Make it easy for them. Tell that story of why you're a great fit and how you can help them sell your background to the hiring manager.
Mm-hmm.
That's perfect. So it's really actionable advice, and definitely seems like all of you agree and have the same stance on how difficult it is to make a career shift during this time. And what about for grads during this time? So those early in their career, they don't have a lot of experience in general, but they're going out there in the job search. Do you have specific advice for them?
I would say,
I would say get very clear about the role, the responsibilities. A lot of times, especially, if you've just graduated, you probably don't know a lot about what that role might entail day to day. And maybe you have some strengths from internships and things like that you could speak to if you knew. So I would say, talk to as many people as you can that are doing that role at different companies. Talk to, anyone. Like, that's a time to rely heavily on your network. First, to just get a really deep understanding of what, kind of what the structure of the company looks like, where that role fits in. And then you can get very clear on your story and play to your strengths about why maybe you're a good fit for that role. But the more kind of understanding and the more clarity you have around what that day-to-day looks like, I think is going to be helpful in terms of, getting you through.
Yeah, I think the other part to that too is, like, when you think about your network, I think one area that a lot of university or college students don't dig deep into enough is their alumni network. There's definitely, just such I've seen so many beautiful things happen coming out of an alumni network, right? And it may be something that takes years for it to happen. And it may not be something that, they may remember, like, gosh, I remember when you were this new grad and you reached out to me, and now I want you to come and be a VP at my company, or I want you to come and, lead sales organization, whatever that looks like. So, keep that alumni network, guys. And it's an easy intro, right? If you are the person who's uncomfortable, that is a great way to intro, yourself. It's like, hey, and just be like, remember when you're, just like I think Allison said earlier, like, networking isn't just all about what you get out of it. It could just be like making that connection, right? And thinking about how you do that through that alumni network, I think is something that we just tend to forget about a lot. And I would say that's not just for a new grad. I think that's kind of across the board as well.
So another question that I'm seeing from a few people is around getting feedback from on-site interviews. So they've gotten past the recruiter phone screen and they've gone to the on-site interview, but they haven't been clearing them. So how do you get feedback on how to improve?
I mean, I think it goes without saying, ask for that feedback, sometimes that's hard, but if you can ask whether, if you're getting, if you're getting a rejection from that on-site and just asking, hey, if there was one thing I could have done better or one thing I could have done differently, chances are they'll probably tell you and give you some advice. You may not, it may be something that you're just not realizing, maybe you need to work on concision. You never know, but just asking for one thing that you might be able to take with you to your next job search or your next interview process may help out.
Yeah. Carly, I agree 100%.
Yeah, I think that that's a great way to frame it. People used to ask me for feedback on, on sites, and sometimes it's just hard to know how to give that feedback. And sometimes it, if it was something like it really was a candidate or there was kind of a situation that was very clear to explain, I would go into that. Cause you can take these rejections very personally. Oftentimes they're not as personal as you think. I know it's very hard to keep that in mind during the search, but like sometimes there's just, they took down the role or they found somebody before you even started the process, and there's things that happen. So, but I think, yeah, being actionable, like what was one thing that I could do better next time, you will hopefully get, at least something that you can work with.
Thank you. And then I have two more questions more around this outreach part of it. The first one is, any tips for how to reach out to recruiters on LinkedIn? I'm sure you're all inundated right now.
Yeah, so I'll say, try to make it memorable, right? Learn a little bit about the person who you're, sending a message to. Gosh, there's, hey, but try not to do it in a salesy way, right? Because not only are recruiters hearing from candidates, they're also hearing from people that are doing their jobs, like trying to sell something, right? So there's a double whammy. So don't get discouraged if you don't hear back. And a lot of times, try to do your homework around recruiters that you're reaching out to, right? If you're like, oh, I'm interested in InVision and I'm an engineer, our recruiters are tied to sales or engineer, and they all have that in their LinkedIn. You don't need to email or LinkedIn or message, however it is that you're going to reach out to somebody. You don't need to do every single recruiter, right? Try to find the ones, and in larger companies, there's going to be multiple ones. Where you're like, oh, you're an engineering recruiter. Okay, great. I'm a software engineer, and then these are the skill sets that I have, and I would love to connect. Right? Like start that way, make it meaningful and easy to read and not too long.
Yeah, I would say be specific. If you have a question, if you have a question, you want to talk about the company, it's this role, whatever it is, don't make it sort of this generic, like now I have to do a lot of work on my end to even understand like what it is that we're talking about. Be very specific with your ask. And I've seen that lead to higher response rates. And that actually goes with really anyone in your network too. If you, just the more specific you can be, the better response you're going to get.
Yeah, I would say, so you apply to a job online, the recruiter is the one who's going to review, the recruiter or sourcer will review your background. So you've already got your name in front of their face. Maybe skip that outreach to the recruiter. Maybe reach out to who you think might be the hiring manager for that role. Maybe reach out to someone who is in that role. We'll take sales, for example. Reach out to the head of sales or reach out to an account executive who's doing that role and ask them, do you like your job? I just applied. Would you mind telling me a little bit more about it? Yep. There's been a lot of people I've actually hired at companies because they prospected into someone who's on that team or that hiring manager with a good prospecting outreach. And then that got to the top of the list, came right to in my inbox, talk to this person. So then you also get some intel on what the job is really like and what the company is like from someone who's not a representative of hiring.
Absolutely.
So Carla, you just answered the next question I was going to ask, which is, they asked, like, what would be an effective way of reaching out to hiring managers via email? So that's one way of doing it, prospecting to hiring manager. Any other tips?
I would say, again, tying back to your network, right? Thinking about how you um, are reaching out, and sometimes that could be part of a group. There's tons of different LinkedIn groups out there as well. If you guys aren't utilizing LinkedIn groups now, there's every industry, there's probably hundreds per every industry. Try to find the ones that have a lot of activity and start trying to find people. You'll see people posting, and if they sound interesting or the challenges that they're trying to solve that they're reaching out to their network on, reach out to them, right? And try to learn more about them, which that could potentially lead to an opportunity as well. And if you know the answer to one of the questions that they have, you should totally answer it.
Yeah, and show, if it's a company that you're truly interested in, where you've had your eye on it, show that you've done some research and show that you're interested in that company. Hey, I want to work at Airtable because I've been using it to track my shoe collection on the side. Whatever it might be, show some genuine interest in that company and why you would like to work at that company.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you everyone for all those great questions. My favorite two takeaways through that was, one, stick to your strengths and don't get discouraged. I really love the insights from all of our panelists. So we're going to ask just a couple closing questions before we wrap up. First, there has been so much shared, and for attendees who do want to stay up to date with what you're up to, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, so I would say for me, check, request me on LinkedIn. I go through my requests at least once a week. So I'll be sure to do that. We also, I would say, if you're interested in InVision and those types of things, feel free to find the appropriate recruiter for your for your specialty. If that's something that you're interested in, and connect with them. You can also put a note, say, hey, Hope said to connect. I'm sure they will really appreciate that. And also, for companies that you're interested in, start following them on LinkedIn or on Glassdoor or, all the other places. Comparably is one that's kind of up and coming. And I know this kind of doesn't really tie back, but to just me. But another thing too is for those of you that are, still looking, Blind is an app, also a website where you can learn a lot about different companies. You can do searches and things like that. You can also find people that will offer to, recommend you or introduce you to people at their company. So I've seen that become very successful through Blind.
Yeah, I agree. Social media, following the companies and following myself on LinkedIn, following, if it's Airtable you're interested in, following us on, Instagram, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, just getting a general sense of what we're up to. Those would be the best methods, I think.
Yeah, I would echo that. LinkedIn's the best place to find me. I had a Twitter account years ago. It's still active. I'm not active on any of those other things, but LinkedIn's a good spot for me.
All right, thank you. And just to keep this all in perspective, what would be words of encouragement or wisdom that you want to leave everyone with today?
I would say,
I think I'll, sorry, go ahead, Hope.
No. Oh, Carly, go ahead.
I would still continue to lean on, if you heard earlier, just you got to where you are for a reason. Keep that confidence up, don't get down, keep that confidence up. Even if you have to fake it on a phone screen, like keep the confidence level up.
Yeah, and resiliency, guys, like resiliency. The days are long. There's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of things that we have not been able to control. Put it into perspective and, always, have grace with yourself and, try to stay as resilient as you possibly can.
Yeah, and I would say just try to take something good away from this. I, for one, am learning a lot about myself that has sort of been forced on me because I, I'm now seeing how I deal with situations that I didn't really want to be in. And I think, there's a lot of good that can come from this. So try to just be resilient through it, be persistent. It might take a while. It is an emotional and challenging time for everybody, especially if you are on the job search. So Yeah.
With that, that's a really great way to end this. We're just about up on time, and Hope, Allison, and Carly, I think I speak for all of us watching. A heartfelt thank you for sharing your expertise and perspective with us. And to everyone watching, thank you so much for joining. If this was helpful, please let us know on the survey linked on the screen below, or answer the short feedback survey we'll be sending out later today. And we do have a special offer for everyone here. At Searchlight, we have used our core technology to build a way for job seekers to get referrals to companies actively hiring. And we spent some time talking exactly about that, about a way to stand out for candidates. So job seekers can work with us to get a more direct path to interviews. We do have a wait list, but happy to give everyone here priority access. So just look out for an email about that today. And that's all. Stay safe, everyone.